Is your child struggling with reading, writing, or spelling?
Do you suspect they might have dyslexia?
At Hill Country Dyslexia Services, our team of experienced educational diagnosticians are here to help.
We offer a thorough evaluation process at HCDS to help you identify your child's needs.
Call us today at 512-648-2291 to schedule an appointment and take the first step towards supporting your child's learning journey. Hi, this is Amy
and Melissa. We are a couple of retired Texas teachers who are CALTS, Certified Academic Language Therapists. We started our own businesses, and now we have a podcast called
The Dyslexia Duo. So join us for our informative podcast, where we'll delve into dyslexia, covering the topics that affect parents, therapists, teachers, practitioners, and anyone who wants to learn more. We'll guide you through everything you need to know, from the first signs to the intricacies of dyslexia curriculum placement and beyond.
This season, we will cover the referral process, what to expect when your child or student is dyslexic, the generational impacts of dyslexia, and how to support those affected.
Come join us! Let's resume our conversation with the insights of Karen Avrit.
Okay, so can you talk to us a little bit about the mouth pictures? That was the hardest thing for me to learn, all of those names, because I moved from one district that used MTA to a district that used Take Flight, and I had to do a crash course in Take Flight, doing the retraining, and I had to go to Shelton for part of the training because I couldn't start with you guys in time. Like, it was a big mess. But the mouth pictures, oh my gosh, I thought I was never going to learn all those names. So what was the inspiration using the mouth pictures alongside with your PA instruction and the spelling component?
Great question. When we first learned the PA mouth pictures and all of that, we were still training in the DTP. And by that, I don't mean the videotapes. We trained therapists to use those books to teach. And so when we did that, we didn't know where to put it. You know, what do you do? So we went with developmentally. Developmentally, PA is supposed to come before alphabet. So we put it at the beginning, and that's, Amy, where your friend, I'm sure, heard about it, because we put it at the beginning of each lesson. It was the first 5 minutes of every lesson of instruction. And so I knew that that was going to be something we definitely incorporated into Take Flight. And again, you know, you learn by what you live. Dr. Black and I did a presentation to a group of doctors. We have a developmental pediatric conference every year at the hospital. And Dr. Black and I did one together. And now these are all pediatricians from across everywhere. And so it came time for us to do the presentation. And this was when PA was kind of the new thing, when it was just coming out. And Dr. Black did the whole brain thing. You know, here's where it is in the brain. Here's what it does. Here's how it helps with reading. Here's the part it plays in that it doesn't play in a dyslexic child, da-da-da-da-da. My job was to come in and give everybody little blocks and have them give them a word, slip, and have them unblend those blocks. They couldn't do it at all. I would say slip, and they'd go, slip. And I'd be like, no, let's try that again. And so I talk about how if your mouth moves, your tongue moves, it's two sounds. Those doctors were fascinated. At the end of the day, when they did their evaluations, Dr. Black got a poor rating because his was a neurobio, you know, it's about the brain, and they knew about the brain. Who got the highest rating of the day? Me. Because I taught them something they did not know. And I figured if these guys and women could get to college and still think that spoil was one sound, that we really needed to focus on that with our kids. And so just being able to segment those individual sounds became so important. And then if we're going to do that and we're going to manipulate those sounds, let's just really and truly, the first year we did it, we did the mouth pictures for PA1 and PA2. And then I went back to colored blocks on their desks for spelling. And the team, when we got together every week, was like, why don't we just see what happens if we leave the mouth pictures and let them spell with the mouth pictures? And it worked, and they got it. And just to say to the kids, wait, what's happening in your mouth? You know, oh, my tongue is tapping. That's a tongue tapper, right? Is it voiced or unvoiced? You know, just to be able to take them to something that concrete that's actually happening in their mouth made all the difference in the world. And so we take them from that very concrete piece to the colored squares in the second year to finally dots on their paper to identify those sounds. And again, we're really thankful we have the kids in the lab that can help us know how to do that. And they do a great job.
I love hearing that. And I did not know that part about the color blocks, like you went, but part of me thinks maybe I did because I was that not first retraining, but one of the first retraining groups in 2004, you know, because that's when I got my out. And I remember going to Scottish Rite and sitting in some big room, I don't know where it was, and working with those trays and going, Robin showed me this before. What am I doing? I'm trying to remember all this, but I did not know that it wasn't, or maybe I did. I don't know. There's a lot in there now. I have a question about the order of presentation. So we see in alphabetic phonics, scope and sequence, ITP, and SAS, that sounds like LDFH. We saw in situation learning, we saw it in DTP, we see it in MTA. I don't know. There might be other curricula out there that have that same order. Why did you change the order of presentation?
Great question. The first order of presentation, all of that, and just for background knowledge, is based on the Hannah study that is seriously a book about this big. We have it at the hospital. It's relentless. It's like a giant dictionary. Wow. And that is based on the number of times a letter is used in English words. And so if you notice on Wheel of Fortune, what are the letters they give them for free every time? The same ones that starts with, because those are the most frequently used letters. And people go, how do you know that? Well, I'm sorry. Useless knowledge, maybe not everybody needs to know, but there you go. And so we began talking about that because I had a very difficult time not starting with a vowel, knowing that then we couldn't teach a word until I got a vowel in there somewhere. But once we did the mouth pictures, I kind of went with the positioning of the sounds in the mouth, and that's why we go to and so early on in take flight, as opposed to V being later on in the DTP and MTA and all of those. I kept the vowels in the same exact order of frequency as what they are in the Hannah study. And when it came to making certain decisions about things, like I moved M and N up because I felt like it was more important than some of those others that came after it, even though the cognates were what we taught when we originally did the mouth pictures in the 90s. We taught the stops first, and then the continuance next. And then we called them the cousin sounds, the yeah, and the and the cognates we called twin sounds because they're made exactly the same way. The only difference is voiced and unvoiced. And then we talked about the cousin sounds, which are now the sails of the ship. Okay. Because we all have something in common with our cousins, but nothing like a twin. And so they're kind of a relative sound. They have something in common with each of them. And then the vowel sounds we spent countless hours in front of a mirror working on to get them where they are. But PA was easy to put into take flight because we had already preempted that. And so I felt okay. Of course, I got a phone call from my son-in-law. Karen, why would you teach on the same day? And I said, why? And he said, because they look too much alike. And I'm like, is Abby having trouble with that? And he's like, no, but I am. And I'm like, well, maybe you need my program. But, it seems to help to teach P and B and D right there together because we attack it right at the beginning. And it's all about where the mouth placement is and the sounds that they make going down that chart.
Wow. Okay.
So I have a question about this though. So as far as the speech sounds, I know the mouth pictures look like what they look like in our mouth. So who was instrumental in kind of identifying all of those placements of our tongue and our lips and all of that?
First, Barbara Wilson, who came from Colorado, helped with that. When we kind of redid them at the hospital, I really wanted to make smiling vowel R, open vowel R, and or round vowel R.
It makes sense.
But it's wrong. Dadgummit. I so wanted it to be right. But we have a speech language pathologist, Sue Jones, on our staff. And she came and worked hours with me to help me really know where the speech sounds are. And if you look in situation spelling from the green original book, it's all, and all is still open sound. And so it's a smiling vowel, and then for R, and then or is all that other open sound. So I was like, fine. I mean, I tried to fight my way, and I truly, the sound of R by itself, I made incorrectly all my life until we started doing the mouth pictures. And I thought I didn't want just the sound of R, to be a curler because my tongue did not curl anywhere. And Sue worked with me and said, Karen, the sides of your tongue curl up around your teeth. And I go, mine don't. And she was like, well, then you're not making the sound correctly. Let's do it. And so, she would work with me to help make the sounds correctly. And that's why we did it.
So these are all really great things for the kids to know too. Like I'll tell my kids, my tongue is kind of curling like a taco and it's touching on the sides of my teeth. And then that kind of helps them understand it a little bit better. But I also think that hearing it from you too, because I don't know why we do all the things we do with all those mouth pictures. I'm just trusting you guys. But I think it's very interesting to hear how the speech therapists have played a role in some of that as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And without that, I mean, I would have never been able to do that on my own. I mean, I needed somebody who knew more about that. Mm-hmm. And here's just another interesting story. Again, keep or take away. The mouth pictures originally were hand drawn and hand colored by hand for several years. And we have kids in the lab every day and parents bring them. And on the second year of one of the girls' classes, her dad comes to my door and he said, if I have to watch the video in that lobby one more time, I'm going to jump out that window. He said, give me something to do. And I said, okay. And I didn't know anything about the man. So I first gave him stuff to make copies of. And he'd come back and he'd go, Karen, that was a really bad copy. So I straightened it up and I got it right. And now it's, and I was like, okay, this guy could be useful. Well, we were working on the mouth pictures one day and we had him in there and I was coloring them. And he came in and he said, what are those? And they were on my wall. And I said, those are our mouth pictures. And he said, those are terrible. And I said, thank you. I worked hard on those. And he said, have you ever thought about doing a computer drawing of them? And I just laughed at it. I said, "No, Barry, I can't computer draw anything." He said, "Do you mind if I try?" He took those mouth pictures home, came back a week or so later. His daughter said, "If I have to make the sound of whatever one more time, my dad keeps going, 'What do you mean you're kicking your tongue in the back of your throat?' I don't get it." And so he came back with them a couple weeks later, had all of them done just exactly what you have now in your kids. He drew them all out like that, as well as the brain picture. And he had been a graphic artist for an oil company.
Oh,
and I had not a single clue what he did. And for his daughter, our services in our lab school are without charge. And so he chose then to take us down to legal, and he signed over all the copyrights to all those masters to the hospital.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's an amazing story.
It is. Yeah.
My gosh, that's a great story.
Yeah. Again, just right people, right place, right time. You know, not anything a human can plan, just, you know, above our pay grade for sure.
That's right.
So now that you've had some years with Take Flight out there, do you ever look at some of the lessons, go, I don't know if I'd do it like that again?
There's one I always say, if I could, I would go back and change. And I don't even know how it got through to publication without anybody calling me on it. And that is, I teach consonant suffix FUL, bull, before I teach before book And I have no idea I'm like, you people were supposed to tell me these things. But anyway, that was one I say all the time. If I could go back and change one thing for sure, that would be it. And then the other thing that I would go back and change, and this is not from me, but from my staff, who complain every time they get to the final stable syllables.
Oh, no.
They're like, we're on final stable syllables.
And for years.
And the next day they commit, we're on final stable syllables again. So
they don't want it in 3 lessons?
Oh, no. No, they think that is ridiculous, too much final stable syllables. So when I wrote JET, the high school curriculum, I put all the final stable syllables in one lesson. And the very first time somebody taught it, they came in and went, you put all the final stable syllables in one lesson? I said, yes. And they were like, that's a lot. I'm like, look, people, you gripe if it's too many, you gripe if it's not enough. Which is it?
My gosh.
So if you get bored with it in Take Flight, you can teach everything in one lesson in JET.
That's right. That's right. So let's talk about these other curricula that have just, boy, it feels like boom, 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 boom. All these other curricula have been coming out. Let's talk a little bit about JET. Who is JET designed for?
JET is designed for, when we wrote it, we said high school and above. We have now used it with 8th grade boys this year, and they have done really, really well. Now, the key is you have to have a child who can move as fast as JET moves, because they're getting 3 new graphemes a day for like the first 10, 15 lessons. And then there are times that they might get 4 suffixes in one lesson. So it goes. The difference is, and the way I've shifted that a little bit is, I do the introductions to like P and B and I are all lesson 1. So they get the introduction of P, B, and I, and then they do the application of all 3 of them together. So instead of P in an application and B in an application and I in an application, we do all the introductions as one and then one application. It's a lot to get through in 45 minutes, and we've had to speed it up.
I kind of love JET, honestly. I love training teachers in it. I loved everything I saw. I liked how fast it went, because I could see for our older kids, Take Flight would go really slow for our older
Yes.
kids. So it made a lot of sense. And then conversely, build. It's not to replace a dyslexia curriculum. And that's always what I tell people.
Oh,
But
yeah.
talk a little bit about the why behind build.
Well, first of all, remember, I started in junior high, but then I went to kindergarten. And I see one young man specifically around town all the time. And I want to go up and apologize to him every day and say, I am so sorry that when you couldn't get rhyming and you never could get, are these two sounds the same at the beginning or the end of a word, that I didn't know enough then to say, let's get you tested. Let's see what we can do about you. Now, his children are in the program, but I want to apologize to him all the time because those younger kids were always my passion. And when they started talking and research began coming out, because now remember, I've been in this for a long time, and we used to say, oh, you couldn't tell if they were dyslexic till the third grade.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I mean, because it's just developmental up till then. Well, I know with my own children, I always say with Michael Avrit, I knew at birth, but I knew early on with those kids, my own kids. And so that was part of my initiative when I was president of ALTA, was really that young child, getting that young child tested earlier, the push to get the K1 testing done in the schools early on so we could do that identification early so they wouldn't have to hit the backlash of being, in the slowest group and made fun of and having to go to the bathroom in church every time anybody asked you to read a Bible verse or whatever. I mean, it was what it was. And we had already done pre-flight, but we were never able to publish pre-flight because it wasn't a full curriculum. It didn't have that letter sound correspondence. It was really just a 36 lesson. Here's some basic phonological awareness that they probably missed. But I had already kind of written the outline for Build several years ago. And so when Debbie and Cheryl got to the hospital, they called me in and said, we would really like to expand the offerings at Scottish Rite. So we already had Take Flight in place. We had already started Bridges, which is the Avatar program. And so when they said we'd like to expand what we offer, I said, well, what about, a K1 curriculum? And they were like, yeah, what about that? And I said, to meet the needs of the schools where they are right now, which is always our first thought, let's make that happen. And I was like, okay. So, it was kind of close to COVID time. We were still working in and out of the home. It came easy. I taught kindergarten for 5 years. I knew what I was doing with it. And I had a really good outline. So that came out fairly easy. Then they said, what else have you been working on? And I said, well, we were writing a high school curriculum, but we put it on the shelf because we wanted to do Bridges instead. And Debbie was like, you have a high school curriculum? And I said, well, I have the scope and sequence of a high school curriculum. And she said, go get it. And I said, okay. So I went and got it and brought it out and, of course, tweaked it and added and took away, but, had a basic foundation for JET. And so that was huge. And then Turbo Start came about at Region 10 when the lawyer said, I don't care if you're on lesson 49 of Take Flight. If this kid is ordered into your class, tomorrow you'll start him on lesson 50. Mm-hmm. And I was like, no. And all the heads turned around to look at us. And I was just going, you can't do that. I mean, you're destroying the child, the other children, and the therapist, by the way, when you try to put a child in on lesson 50 or 70 or whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. And so I was sitting at a table with some of the girls that I had trained over the years and Debbie and Lori. And I said, we cannot let that happen. We've got to have something. So before I left the building that day, I had a scope and sequence for Turbo Start.
Wow.
And went back. We made it a team effort. We found that out in late September. We made it a team effort to have it done by January 1st. I divided up my team into, here's the scope and sequence. I'll write all the new learning. You write the sentences. You write the words. You do the spelling. You do. And that's what we did. And every week we met together with 4 new lessons a week and finished Turbo Start so that we could get it out to the schools because they were dying for help of what to do with these kids that were being, onesie, twosie at a time and dropping into their program in the middle of the program, which would make sometimes 10 kids in their program and in their class. So that's how we kind of came across Turbo Start.
I was in that situation too. They get, at the time, 504 arted in, and the parents would waive the 5-day period, and you're like, well, okay, we're kind of far ahead, but okay. And now, doesn't it say at the beginning of Take Flight, they have to start at lesson 1?
Does now. I called TEA. I mean, I'm just being real. And I called and said, what happened to the cumulative sequential part of the law? And they said, but Karen, special education law says that they are to receive services immediately. Yeah. And I said, but that's so unfair to that child and all the others. And the law was the law. I just felt like we had to come up with a way to work around that and a way to help those kids get a start. It has everything that the handbook says it has to have, but it gives them a start. It doesn't matter if they start in lesson 1, lesson 10, lesson 15. I don't care where they start. They can drop in and drop out of that until there's another group made and they can move forward.
And we're at a point now we can train like reading interventionists in Turbo, right?
Yes, it can be any certified teacher.
Okay.
That's really crucial because I have students who I see in my private practice who, every time they come, I say, okay, what did you learn in school today in your dyslexia class? Oh, well, we really haven't gotten very far. We got a new student and we haven't learned any new lessons in a long time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, well, we got to make sure that you're learning some lessons. So I know what I'm needing to teach them. I teach them the lessons, but that is crucial for them in public school to get that assistance. So I love to hear that they've got that available to them now. And I hope some school districts, maybe the administrators who may be listening to our podcast, will start to implement that.
Absolutely. Because for Take Flight therapists, it's a half a day of training. For a certified teacher, it's just 1 day of training. That's all that it is. So, they can learn to implement that, whether they're a special education teacher, just a teacher that has that open hour that they can teach remedial reading or whatever they need to do. It's available to them.
That's wonderful.
Now a word from our newest sponsor. Established in 1926, the Gow School is the first school in the nation created for students with dyslexia and other language-based learning differences.
Today, Gow is a premier boarding and day school for students in grades 5 through postgraduate.
Located 30 minutes from Buffalo, New York, Gow's campus features 7 dormitories, classrooms, an indoor athletic center, sports fields, theater and art studios, a robotics lab, and more.
To find out more about this nurturing and supportive academic environment, please visit www.gow.org or call 716-652-3450. Hi. This is Amy Rodenroth, and as part of the Dyslexia Duo podcast team and owner of Discovery Dyslexia Services, I want to talk to you about my business. Our COUT-trained team offers expert virtual or in-person therapy located in Prosper, Texas, using proven dyslexia curricula like Take Flight, Build, MTA, Alphabetic Phonics, and Reading by Design. We also provide crucial independent evaluations and advocacy services. Don't wait. Empower your child today. Visit www.discoveread.com to learn more. That again is www.dyscoveread.com. Discoveread, covering all your dyslexia needs. Let's return to the show. So Bridges is the Avatar curricula. It's the same order of presentation of Take Flight, right?
Absolutely. It is Take Flight. The sentences are the same. The words are the same. The difference is Miss Hallie, who sounds very familiar because it's my voice. The way we came about that was, what is the hardest part of the curriculum to train therapists?
Yeah.
And the hardest part was to get them to be so precise and exact and to help change their thinking on new learning and why we had to do the linkages and do all of that. And then the prep for reading, because your knowledge has to be in depth to prep for reading, and prep for spelling. And so that's what Miss Hallie does. It is 10 to 15 minutes of a lesson is all the Avatar does. Everything else is scripted, and it's scripted with very few exceptions from Take Flight. The difference is I chose which rap page the average dyslexic student will read. We really work to be sure that it's kind of that middle of the road group that will make progress, but yet the scope and sequence, order of presentation, exactly the same. So if a child is in a Bridges class and is struggling, they can transition to a therapist if there's one available and be exactly on the same lesson that they were on when they were in Bridges. Yeah. And same way, if you get a kid who, I always say with those boys that I had, once I wrote the 3 words on the board, I could have left the room because they would look at it and go, oh, they're all 1-syllable base words. They all have short vowels and they all have a final CK. Why am I here? You know, I mean, so those kids, the Avatar is great for them. But Hallie takes her time. The good thing about it is the teacher can make her go back and say things again. They can take time in between all of them to move forward. So the teacher has much more control than the videotape program that we did originally.
That was what I asked about. What's the difference?
Yeah. Because the videotape was relentless. You put it in, you plugged it in, and you went with it. You know, here the teacher in the classroom is truly a co-teacher to Miss Hallie. Mm-hmm. And if the kids miss, so the name of the letter is, they push the button back and Miss Hallie says again, so the name of the letter is, and if they miss the new learning and they can't respond, they can take them back to the new learning if they need to get her to do it. Listen again. Let's hear it one more time so that they can get all of that in.
Wow. That's amazing.
That's cool. So my origin story I've said before, and I'm not going to go into great detail about it.
Sound like multiverse superhero origin story type of thing.
I'm so grateful that I was put into the dyslexia world by my now coworker, Allison. So I hope she's listening. She got me started in dyslexia by being her long-term sub while she was pregnant. And I fell in love with it. I didn't love it right away because I was an elementary teacher and I was going to teach reading with all the cute little things. And, you know, you know how we learn how to teach reading.
I do know. Yes.
So at first I didn't love it, but then I saw their progress and I saw how the kids are just brilliant. They're just neat people. And I fell in love with them and I fell in love with their progress and I fell in love with how it felt to work with them and be assisting with like a bigger purpose, I felt. So what advice would you give to an instructor considering a move, or, you know, somebody like me considering a move into dyslexia therapy from your perspective?
Well, one thing is you'll never teach the same way again. Never. I mean, if I went back into a public school classroom right now whether it was kindergarten or third grade or even junior high English, I would not teach the way I did then. You know more about the English language than anyone around you, which is kind of interesting. I'm just going to say the way I got into it is I was a third grade teacher. My brother is very dyslexic, didn't know till he was in college. So dyslexia was always kind of back there for me. And one day I was teaching third grade and I put the rooftop over the A, and one of the kids in my class goes, "Ma'am, you know that has a name, right?" And I said, "What has a name?" And he said, "That rooftop." And I said, "It has a name?" And he said, "Yes, ma'am, that's called a circumflex." So I looked it up. He was right. And I said, "How do you know that?" And he says, "We use that in our dyslexia program." So that day I went straight down to Nancy Phillips and said, "How can I become a part of this? Because this kid knows more than I do. And I think I'm, an average teacher or above, and he's telling me what I don't know." So I think that's really important. The other thing is, and I want to be sure to mention this, Tim Odegard, Dr. Tim Odegard, who is a research scientist in Tennessee, Middle Tennessee State. Yeah. Tim came to us many years ago and came to Dr. Black and I and said, "I would like to become a therapist." Why? Why do you want, you're a PhD in research at the University of Texas in Arlington. He said, "I want to understand what I need to research. I want to understand really how it works from the bottom up." And he did. And he had a lab class at the university. Kids came to him every day. He taught the curriculum. At our graduation at that time, every person got to say a little something. So it came time for him to say a little something. And he got up and he had a huge picture frame in his hand. And he walked up and he looked at the teachers and he had told them for 2 years, "I could never do what y'all do. I could not handle teaching dyslexia, doing bus duty, taking care of lunch duty, taking my own family backwards and forwards wherever they needed to do." That was beyond anything he ever thought he could do. But he raised up this picture and he had taken our kids from the dyslexia lab into fMRI machines. And he had fMRI pictures of pre-remediation brains and post-remediation brains. And he said, "I have told you guys for 2 years that you are superheroes in my book." He said, "But what I want you to know is you're brain surgeons. And I have the proof because you truly change the brains of dyslexic children with what you do." And then he went on to tell his story that he is dyslexic and had he been able to have that as a child. And I can hardly talk about it without tearing up because it was such a validation for me personally, of course, as the author of Take Flight, but for all the kids that we help, which, are thousands and thousands a year, to know that as a teacher, what you now know allows you to be a brain surgeon. It allows you to truly change the brain of a child with dyslexia. And that's, more than you could ever think or hope for, I think, in your life.
It's stunning and it gives me chills. And then I also think not only are you changing that child's life, you're changing the whole life of the family too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh my God. And those teachers who made the change to become therapists, that's huge when you think of, because there's plenty of teachers that think, "I could do more with my students, but I just don't know how."
What?
Right? And it's just overwhelming to think of the impact that Take Flight, Scottish Rite, everything has on the dyslexia community. I mean, we are the hub. I joke around. I say, throw a rock, you hit a Celt out here. But I wish other states had that. I hear from people in other states quite a bit. Hey, we don't have therapists out here. I'm like, wow, and it just seems unreal to me because I'm immersed in it on this side. Oh my God! So, Karen, what are you going to do when you retire now?
Great question. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is the week following, my husband and I are going on a trip with another couple that are friends of ours. We're going to drive to New York City and tour our way up there. We're going to get on a ship and take a cruise up through Canada, Nova Scotia, through Maine and back down to New York, and then take a week to get back home. So kind of a 3-week vacation of touring that side of the country and coming back to the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Wow.
And I have been fortunate enough that there's a training center opening in Houston that I am going to help with that, where my 2 youngest grandchildren are. So it gives me a little bit of an excuse to spend even more time with them. The 2 here are older, 16 and 12, very active, very going. And we have always been there with them through every CAL, every public speaking, all of that. And now with these 2, we have a baseball player and a cheerleader. So we'll be doing some fun events on the weekends, I'm sure.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So you're going to retire, but you're also going and helping set up this new program. So kind of retirement.
Kind of retirement. That's what my husband said. You're kind of retiring.
I was going to say, I don't really see you retiring. I don't see you just stopping it at all. Okay. So we're getting close to wrapping it up. So our listeners and my coworker, you've met Stephanie, she said, stop asking them for your speakers for books and articles and stuff. 'Cause my husband's getting tired of seeing my Amazon cart. But do you have any articles or books you'd refer people to when they're asking about dyslexia or anything along those lines? Or who inspires you still? So
many people still inspire me, of course, with everything that they're doing. And I'm going to say a couple of things to that. Number one, as a mother, so I'm going to speak as the mom, the one book that probably helped me the most, and now remember, this is a long time ago, was No One to Play With.
Oh.
And that is because it talks about the social side of dyslexia. And I had that little girl who was either really comfortable with young children or being a part of a grown-up group. She never quite fit in with her own age group of kids until she got much older. And as a mother, that really bothered me because I was like, you got to have some friends your own age. But she felt safe with the young ones because she knew as much as them, or if not more. And she knew she had a problem that she couldn't read, but she didn't know how to deal with that with her friends. So I'm just going to say that's probably the book that impacted me as a mother quite a bit because I needed that social side of understanding dyslexia and understanding a disability. And now, now she knows everybody in Corsicana, Texas, and can't go to Walmart with her without having to stop and chat 20 times. But she's very social now. But that took a while for us to get to that point in her life. And as a parent with a young child with dyslexia, I think that's important to know. As far as other people, I think there are so many new people out there now with good articles. Tim Odegard wrote a great article about the dyslexic brain. And the thing you got to love about Tim is he's walked it.
Yeah.
So he can not only tell you about what this part of the brain does, but what part of your remediation will help that part of the brain.
Wow.
And so if you ever get a chance to have him do that lecture for you, or you get a hold of that article, he got tired of giving it for me because that's what I'd ask him for every time. And he goes, but I've done so much more research. And I'm like, I don't care. That's what I want to hear. And that's what I want these people to hear. What part of the brain are they honing in on? Why do we do the mouth pictures? Why do we do that automaticity? Why do we do all of that? What part of the disability are you helping to remediate?
Do you know what that's called? That article? Do you have that name off the top of your head?
I don't have it off the top. It was in the Alta newsletter.
Yeah.
And I have it, and I can certainly send it, but yes.
I might have that, just saying.
Yeah. And so those are probably my go-to if I am really wanting to talk to a teacher, a therapist, or wanting to talk to a parent about their difficulty with their child. And I've been there, done that.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Those are great. That's great. Yeah. I'm going to look for that Know When to Play With book. I'm really curious about it.
Okay. So I'm going to ask my magic question.
Magic question.
I need a sound effect for this.
Yeah, you should have a little.
We'll get our producer on it.
If you had one wish that you could grant for our students, what would it be and why?
The one wish would be that they would never have to know what it was like to have the inability to read. Yeah. And the other wish is if that were to persist, and I didn't get my first wish, my wish would be they gave it everything they could in the amount of time that we have them for remediation. Mm-hmm. They didn't bring so much baggage to the table, that they came for a purpose and they did it and heard it and internalized all of it so that they could be the best they could be in the future.
That's wonderful.
I want all kids to be able to do the best they can be. Mm-hmm. Whether that's the best welder they can be, like my son is, or, the best social butterfly. My daughter's she runs I forget the operations manager of a huge church downtown. And what that means is she knows every person in that church and all their kids and all the family. And, that is her thing. My brother is a lawyer, and, we didn't know he was dyslexic until he was grown and in college. And so anything you put your mind to, you can do, and just do it to the best of your ability.
That's right. That's wonderful.
Thank
you, Karen.
Oh my gosh. This has been such a good interview, and I've learned still so much. And I know I didn't ask all the questions still. There's going to be more. We'll do a.
I think we just need her back.
Oh, there you go.
She'll be retired. I mean, she'll have all the time in the world.
We say that too. I think we said that.
See what happens. Yeah. See.
Well, awesome. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and end this. So this is Amy
and Melissa,
and we're the
Dyslexia Duo.
We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
The Dyslexia Duo podcast hosts are Amy Rodenroth,
Melissa Dean.
Our producer is Greg Rodenroth.
You can find us on Facebook at The Dyslexia Duo.
Email us any questions or comments at thedyslexiaduo@gmail.com.
Awareness is so important. Share this podcast with your friends,
family,
and teachers.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye.